The shuttle vibrated through every bone in Ivor Tann's body. The air tasted of recycled oxygen and sweat. A metallic dryness coated his tongue. It refused to clear. Red emergency strips along the floor threw dim light across 17 faces. Each face showed a different shade of exhaustion or fear. 12 nations, one promise. Ivor pressed his thumb against his palm. The gesture was a habit, he had never broken it. The motion felt small against the shuddering hull. He felt the weight of the armor. It clung to his skin like a second heartbeat. The symbiont armor pulsed against his ribs, cool, alive. It had bonded to him 3 days ago. The bonding took place in a sterile chamber. The Reill called it a Reill chamber. He still had not gotten used to the sensation. Something breathed alongside him, just beneath the surface of his own skin. He sat between a woman from a coastal city and a man whose accent placed him in the highlands. They did not speak. None of them spoke. The shuttle's engine pitch dropped. The vibration shifted from a constant scream to a lower, grinding rumble. Atmosphere. Lieutenant Nessa Vane stood at the front of the compartment. She rolled her shoulders, once, twice. A brief shake loosened tension from her frame. She touched the scar on her left cheekbone, a pale line against her skin. "Listen up," she said, her voice cut through the engine noise. "Our objective is a research station on the northern ridge. The Kreth have held it for 6 days. We take it back." She tapped a display on her wrist. A schematic flickered to life. It projected against the shuttle's interior wall. 3 buildings, a central dome, a perimeter fence. "The Reill want the data cores intact," she said. "That means no heavy ordnance inside the main structure. We clear rooms manually. Questions." No one asked questions. The silence was not confidence. It was the quiet of people who had already accepted they might not come back. Commander Havarsen stepped forward from the rear of the shuttle. He was broader than the conscripts. His beard was gray-streaked and trimmed close. His eyes moved slowly across each face as if counting. He tapped his forefinger twice against the bulkhead before he spoke. "The Reill are watching," he said. His voice was flat, a baritone that never rose. "This is a test. First deployment of human ground forces in a proxy action. They want to see what we can do." He paused, his finger tapped again. "Show them." The shuttle lurched. The red lights flickered and died for 2 full seconds. When they returned, the engine's pitch had changed again. Higher now, strained. Someone behind Ivor breathed a curse in a language he did not know. Then the light at the front of the shuttle changed. A flicker of blue, a column of shimmering gel, translucent and 2 meters tall. It resolved itself into the shape of a Reill. The hologram wavered as the shuttle shook. The bioluminescence inside the image pulsed with steady deliberation. No face, no eyes, only a presence. It vibrated the air. "Ambassador Zyl'thor." The vibration resolved into speech, flat galactic standard, each syllable pressed into existence without emotion. "Your species has been observed for 100 years. You have no FTL, you have no collective doctrine. You are considered a low-certainty asset." The hologram paused. The bioluminescence flickered to a pale orange. "Prove otherwise." The shuttle hit the ground. The impact drove the breath from Ivor's lungs. His armor hardened instinctively. A brief tightening across his chest and spine. It felt like being held. Then the ramp began to lower. The world outside bled in. Gray dust and wreckage under a sky the color of old bone. The air was cold and thin. A chemical sting burned the inside of his nose. A research station sat on a ridge a kilometer distant, its dome cracked and dark. Beyond it, the horizon curved into nothing. Ivor followed the squad down the ramp. The crunch of regolith under his boots was the loudest thing he had heard in hours. He saw them before the order came. A Kreth patrol moved along the ridgeline, 7 figures in dark green scale, bipedal, bony spinal ridges visible even at this distance. They moved with practiced discipline, one hand on their weapons, 3-fingered claws gripping the stocks with precision. Their heads swiveled in unison, scanning. Ivor stopped breathing. He watched them, something shifted inside him. The numbness that had carried him through induction cracked, through the armor bonding, through the drop. He looked at the patrol, he understood. The Reill were not allies. They were scientists. They had studied humanity for 100 years from a distance. Now they had brought 17 conscripts to a dead moon. They wanted to see what happened when the experiment encountered a variable. The variable was green and scaled, and carried a rifle. The lives of the soldiers around him were data points. His life was a data point. The Reill would watch. They would measure. They would calculate whether humanity was worth further investment. He looked down at his own hands. The symbiont armor had darkened around his fingers. A living black ended in clean nails. He had used these hands to mend fishing nets, to tie knots that held against the tide. Now they held a weapon. The cold in his chest did not go away. It changed. It became a focused, sharp-edged thing. It sat behind his ribs, it whispered. If he was going to die for someone else's experiment, he would make the data memorable. A sound rolled across the plain. Low at first, a vibration traveled through the ground. It traveled up through the soles of his boots. Then it rose, an explosion, distant but growing, followed by a shriek that split the air. Every soldier dropped to one knee. Incoming. Ivor hit the ground. The first shell landed 300 meters to the left. Dust and rock fountained into the gray sky. The second landed closer, 200 meters. The shockwave punched through his armor. It rattled his teeth. The Kreth had spotted them. No orders came through the comm, no voice from the Reill. The hologram at the shuttle's ramp flickered once and vanished. The blue light was gone. Ivor looked at Lieutenant Vane. She stared at the ridge. Her shoulders set, her jaw tight. She looked at Commander Sen. Sen tapped his forefinger twice against his thigh. Then he said nothing. The third shell landed behind them, close enough that the heat washed over Ivor's back. The shuttle's hull rang like a bell. No orders, no support, no doctrine from a species that had watched them for a century. They still called humanity a low-certainty asset. Ivor pressed his thumb into his palm until it hurt. The data would be memorable. He would make sure of it. The smoke bit at Nessa's throat as she stepped over the shattered console. Glass crunched under her boots. The emergency lights threw long, pulsing shadows across the lab. The smell of burnt insulation hung thick in the air. She held up a fist. The squad stopped. Behind her, 3 others waited with rifles raised. Della had her back to a collapsed shelving unit. Wren crouched low, breathing through his teeth. Beckett scanned the ceiling for vents or droppers. Ivor Tann stood at the rear. His new armor pulsed once against his ribs, a second heartbeat. The room ahead was the central lab. 2 doors, one at the north end, one at the south. Somewhere inside, 3 Kreth soldiers. Nessa rolled her shoulders. The motion loosened the tight band across her shoulder blades. 17 minutes since ground impact. 17 minutes of clearing dead corridors and overturned offices. 3 contact engagements. 2 kills confirmed. 0 human casualties. She wanted to keep that number clean. Artifex Kell's drone hovered at her left shoulder. The sphere was no larger than her fist. Inside it, a small sample of gel pulsed with slow bioluminescence. It had not spoken since they entered the station. It only recorded. Nessa pointed at the north door. She pointed at Beckett. She pointed at the south door. She pointed at herself and the others. Beckett nodded. He moved into position with silent steps. She pulled the thermal scanner from her belt. The readout showed 3 heat signatures in the center of the room. They clustered around a raised platform, probably a command console. The signatures were hot and stable. Kreth body temperature ran 5 degrees above human baseline. They would show up clearly on any thermal scope. But they knew that too. Nessa looked up at the ceiling. A ventilation grate ran the length of the lab, standard prefab construction. The duct was wide enough to channel smoke. She tapped her comm. Beckett, hold at the door, do not breach. Beckett's voice came back low, holding. She turned to Della. I need you to find the station's oxygen control panel. It is either in the maintenance corridor or the server room. Flood the central lab with smoke, full pressure. Della blinked. The whole room, sir, we will lose visual. Kreth used thermal sensors, Nessa said. Smoke at high pressure messes with heat dispersion. It creates thermal shadows, hot pockets, false signatures. They will not see us any better than we see them. Della's mouth opened. Closed, she moved. Wren spoke. Standard Reill Doctrine says we should use electronic warfare first, jam their comms, then breach slow with a shield drone. Standard Reill Doctrine was not written for us, Nessa said. I want the lab in 90 seconds, no casualties. The words felt right. They landed like a door slamming shut. Della found the panel. The vents groaned. A thick white fog poured into the lab through every grate in the ceiling. It rolled across the floor. It rose in churning clouds. Within 10 seconds, the room became a solid wall of white. Nessa pulled her gas mask from her belt. She clicked it into place. The filters caught the smoke with a soft hiss. She raised her rifle. Beckett, breach on my mark. 3, 2, 1. She kicked the south door open. The smoke was absolute. She saw nothing beyond the first meter, but she had counted the steps during the recon sweep, 12 meters to the central platform, 3 meters of open space on either side. She moved at a crouch, one hand on the wall to her left. Behind her, Ivor's footsteps were steady. He did not hesitate. The Kreth fired. A heavy round punched through the smoke to her right. It hit a metal cabinet. A sharp clang echoed through the room. She did not stop. The thermal confusion was working. The heat of the smoke created false layers. The Kreth were shooting at ghosts. She reached the platform. She saw a shape in the haze, tall, bipedal, dark green scales catching the emergency light. It turned toward her. Its rifle came up. She fired first. 2 rounds sent her mass. The Kreth crumpled. It hit the deck with a wet thud. From the north side, Beckett's rifle cracked twice. A second Kreth fell. The third tried to run. Wren had already circled around the platform. He put a round through its knee. He put a second through its throat. Silence. The smoke began to thin. Nessa stood over the bodies. The emergency lights pulsed once, twice. Steady again, 90 seconds, no casualties. Artifex Kell's drone floated through the haze. It hovered over the dead Kreth. Its gel sample flickered through a pattern of rapid blue pulses. Confusion. It turned to face Nessa. "You had no confirmation of enemy positions," the drone said. Its voice was flat. The sound came from the gel's vibration against the drone's casing. "You risked a full squad on a guess." Nessa pulled her mask off. She wiped soot from her cheek. "We improvised, that is what we do." The drone pulsed again. Slower this time, it did not respond. Beckett moved to the window. He looked out at the gray landscape. "We have company, 2nd Patrol, east approach, about 15 units. They are moving fast." Nessa crossed to the window. The Kreth patrol was 200 meters out. They moved in disciplined lines. They headed straight for the station's main entrance. She turned back to the squad. "We pull back, use the corridor geometry, create kill zones at every junction. We buy time until extraction arrives." Wren spoke. "How long?" "The Reill said they would have a craft in 14 minutes. That was 5 minutes ago. We need to hold for 9. Della chambered around. 9 minutes, we can do that." They moved. The retreat was a stuttered thing. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Nessa directed them from junction to junction. She used the station's layout as a weapon. The corridors were narrow. The Kreth could only advance shoulder to shoulder. Every corner became a bottleneck. The first engagement lasted 40 seconds. 2 Kreth down, the squad pulled back. The second engagement lasted 1 minute and 10 seconds. 3 Kreth down. Beckett took a glancing round to his shoulder armor. The impact spun him. He stayed upright. The third engagement went wrong. Nessa called the retreat. The squad fell back through a maintenance corridor. Ivor was the last man through the door. He turned to cover the entrance. He froze. A Kreth soldier had flanked them. It came through a side passage no one had checked. It raised its rifle at Ivor's exposed back. Ivor did not move. Nessa ran. She grabbed his webbing with both hands. She yanked him backward through the door. The Kreth fired. The round hit the door frame. Sparks showered them both. She dragged him into the next corridor. He stumbled. He caught himself. He met her eyes. He nodded once. She nodded back. No words, none needed. They held the line for 13 minutes. At 13 minutes and 20 seconds, a Reill extraction craft dropped through the bone-colored sky. It landed 50 meters from the station's east exit. The squad ran. The craft's ramp closed behind them. The engines screamed. The craft lifted. The station shrank beneath them. Nessa leaned her head against the hull. Her ears rang. Her shoulder ached. She tasted smoke and copper. She looked out the window. A new shape hung in the planet's orbit. Massive, dark, angular in a way that spoke of pure military function, a Kreth dreadnought. It had not been there when they landed. The Reill communication channel went dead. Artifex Kell's drone sat silent in the corner. Its gel was dim, still. Nessa stared at the dreadnought. It grew larger in the window. The test was over. The data had been collected. But the dreadnought was not here for data. She pressed her palm against the cold hull. She felt the vibration of the engines fighting for altitude. The war was just beginning. The symbiont armor settled over Ivor Tann's forearm like a cold, wet cloth. He watched it crawl. That was the only word for it. He watched the living black carapace extend thread-like tendrils. They burrowed into the hair follicles on his wrist. The sensation was not pain. It was suction, a slow pull against his skin. The armor bonded itself to his nervous system. He sat in a sterile white cubicle. The walls were bare and smooth. They gave back no reflection. His hands trembled in his lap. The tremors had started after the extraction. They had not stopped. The wall in front of him rippled. It did not open. It changed consistency. It became translucent, then transparent. Beyond it lay a sphere, the Reill observation deck. Gel walls pulsed with soft amber light. The light shifted lazily like sunset through fog. At the center of the sphere floated Ambassador Zyl'thor. The Reill's body was a column of shimmering gel, 2 meters tall. Its internal bioluminescence flickered bright blue, clinical blue. Ivor had learned to read those colors. Blue meant analysis, blue meant dissection. Zyl'thor extended a pseudopod. The gesture was slow, deliberate, a statement of patience. The human designated Ivor Tann, the Reill vibrated. Its voice came from everywhere in the room. A low hum resonated in Ivor's chest. Your squad achieved the objective. The sector governor is dead. The Kreth colony is in administrative chaos. Ivor pressed his thumb against his palm. He said nothing. But there were casualties. Zyl'thor's internal light dimmed to a cooler shade. 3 of your soldiers died during extraction. Their symbiont armor experienced psychological feedback cascade. The armor attacked both enemy and friendly forces before expiring. Ivor remembered the extraction shuttle. He remembered the smell of ozone and blood. He remembered Private Voss. Voss had been screaming because his armor was screaming at him. The living carapace had turned against its host. It was trying to claw its way out of Voss's own chest. They had not been able to separate them. The armor and the man had died together, locked in a black embrace. He swallowed. His throat was dry. Artifex Kell said the bond was stable. Zyl'thor pulsed. The bond is stable under controlled conditions. The extraction was not controlled. There was sustained fire. The Kreth deployed sonic disruptors. The feedback cascade was a predictable outcome of operating outside doctrinal parameters. It spoke of doctrine. Ivor wanted to laugh. There was no doctrine. There was only surviving the next 5 minutes. Commander Ivor Tann appeared on a view screen embedded in the cubicle's ceiling. His face was drawn. The skin under his eyes was dark as old bruises. He tapped 2 fingers on the edge of the frame before speaking. Ambassador, he said, his voice was flat. We need to talk about the armor failure. The armor did not fail, Zyl'thor replied. The operators failed to manage the psychological bond. The armor performed exactly as designed. Ivor looked down at his forearm. The carapace had stopped moving. It lay flush against his skin, seamless like a second layer of flesh. He could feel it breathing. He could feel its appetite, a low hunger at the edge of his thoughts. It was a whisper without words, a constant pull toward aggression, toward violence. He had started dreaming of claws. Commander Tann leaned forward. You told us this was a test, a small deployment to prove our capability. Now you want to send us into a fortified mining colony with armor that kills our own people. The Reill counselors had been silent until now. They floated at the edges of the observation sphere, 3 smaller columns of gel. Their internal lights dim and steady, observing, measuring. The one on the left pulsed once, a soft violet glow. The Council has reviewed the data, Zyl'thor stated. Your chaos tolerance is a statistically significant advantage. Human performance does not degrade under novel high-entropy conditions. Your squad achieved the objective despite the Kreth deploying countermeasures that would have paralyzed most species. Zyl'thor's internal light shifted to a deeper blue. It was the color of a decision already made. The Council authorizes a larger deployment. Ivor's hand stopped trembling. Something settled in his chest. A cold weight. He had known this was coming. He had known from the moment the shuttle landed on the dead moon. They were not soldiers. They were data points. The experiment was not over. Commander Tann's jaw tightened, and the armor will be provided in greater numbers. The view screen flickered. Tann was quiet for a long moment. Then he tapped his forefinger twice. He spoke in a voice that did not rise. I formally protest this decision to the Council. The Reill counselors did not respond. They did not need to. Ivor understood. The protest was noted. It would be filed. It would change nothing. He looked at his hands. The black carapace glistened under the sterile white light. It felt like a second heartbeat against his ribs. It whispered hunger. He thought of his mother's voice. He had heard it in his dream the night before. She had been calling him in from the shore, her voice carrying over the sound of waves. He had turned to answer her. In the dream, he had claws. He had raised them. she had screamed. Ivor stood up. His legs were steady now. "When do we leave?" he asked. Zyl'thor's internal light flickered. The color was hard to read. It might have been surprise, it might have been satisfaction. "You rotate in 12 hours. The Kreth have established a governor in the mining colony on Ishtar's scar. He must be removed." It paused. Artifacts Kell wishes to conduct one final assessment of the bond before deployment. Report to the medical bay. Ivor nodded. He did not look at Commander Sen. He did not look at Zyl'thor. He walked out of the sterile white cubicle and into the corridor beyond. The walls were Reill gel, translucent and pulsing with slow light. They hummed at a frequency just below hearing. The sound vibrated in his teeth. Artifacts Kell waited in the medical bay. The smaller Reill floated above a diagnostic table. Its crystalline internal structure caught the light. It scattered the light in sharp patterns. Kell communicated in rapid pulses of green. Ivor had learned to understand some of them. Green meant analysis. Rapid green meant urgency. "The human designated Ivor Tann," Kell pulsed. "Your bond index is elevated. The armor is embedding deeper than expected." "Is that bad?" Kell's internal structure dimmed. "The bond should stabilize after 3 cycles. Yours has not. You are dreaming." Ivor did not answer. "The armor is developing a psychological signature," Kell said. "It is learning you. That is not standard. The armor should remain passive. Yours is adapting." Ivor thought of the hunger, the whisper, the dream of claws. "What does that mean?" Kell's light pulsed once, a brief, sharp red. "I do not know. I have recommended that the deployment be delayed for observation." Ivor felt something cold in his chest. "And Zyl'thor?" "Overruled. Operational necessity." The word landed like a stone. Ivor pressed his thumb against his palm. He thought of the extraction shuttle, the smell of ozone and blood, Private Voss screaming, the armor eating him from the inside out. He looked at his forearm. The carapace was warm now. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Teach me how to control it," he said. Kell's internal structure flickered. "That is not the purpose of the armor. The armor controls itself." "Then teach me how to make it stop." Kell was silent, its light dimmed to a steady gray. "I do not believe that is possible." Ivor closed his eyes. The hunger was there, waiting at the edge of his thoughts. Patient, it had all the time in the world. He opened his eyes. "I will figure it out." He walked out of the medical bay. The corridor hummed. The walls pulsed. The armor breathed against his skin. He thought of his mother's voice. He thought of claws. Then the message arrived. Ambassador Zyl'thor received it first. A data stream that cut through the observation deck's ambient glow like a blade. The Reill counselors went still. Their internal lights dimmed to a single flat orange. Zyl'thor read the transmission. Its bioluminescence flickered through a spectrum of colors too fast to parse. Then it stabilized on a pale, uncertain yellow. "The Kreth have offered a ceasefire," Zyl'thor announced. The room felt the words before it heard them, a vibration in the gel walls. "In exchange, they request the human forces be handed over for study." The Reill counselors pulsed in sequence. A vote. Commander Sen's voice cut through from the view screen. "You cannot be serious." Zyl'thor did not look at him. Its internal light shifted to a cool, functional blue. "The council is deliberating." The vote took 7 seconds. Zyl'thor turned toward the cubicle where Ivor Tann stood watching. Its voice was steady, clinical. "The decision is to accept the ceasefire. The humans will be transferred to Kreth custody for study." The hunger in Ivor's chest went quiet. He looked down at his forearm. The carapace was moving. The command tent sagged under the weight of a sky that bled sulfur. The rain struck the fabric with a sound like hot fat on a griddle. Each drop hissed into vapor where it seeped through the seams. A single battery lamp cast a pool of yellow light over a folding table. Commander Ivor Tann stared at the datapad in his hand. He had decrypted the communique himself. It had taken 6 hours and the last of his patience. The Reill Council had reached a decision. They were terminating the experiment. The human force on Ossuary was to be recalled, debriefed, placed in long-term observation. The Kreth would reclaim the moon within the week. The Reill would negotiate a truce. They would cede the system in exchange for concessions elsewhere. 17 soldiers had died to secure that research station. Their deaths were now a bargaining chip. Sen set the datapad down. He tapped his forefinger twice on the table edge. The sound was absorbed by the wet canvas around them. He looked at the 4 people in the tent with him. Nessa Vane stood near the entrance, one hand on a crutch, the other cradling a bandaged arm. Her face was pale under the scar. Solène sat on a crate. She cleaned a sidearm with mechanical precision. Rickard leaned against the support pole, arms crossed, watching Sen with flat, waiting eyes. Ivor Tann crouched in the corner, his symbiont armor dormant across his chest like a black bruise. His fingers tapped a slow rhythm against his rifle stock. A folk song from his village. Sen recognized it. He had heard it in the drop ship during the descent. Sen broke the silence. He did not raise his voice. "The Reill are pulling us out. They have classified us as a low-certainty asset with diminishing returns." He let the words settle. "The Council has already moved on to other experiments. We are not going home. We are going into a cage." Nessa straightened. Her crutch clacked against the ground. "How long until extraction?" 40 standard hours. The Reill transport is on approach. It will land at the main depot. It will take our weapons. It will load us like cargo." Sen met her eyes. "That is the official timeline." Ivor stopped tapping. His fingers went still on the rifle. His voice was dry and quiet. "And the unofficial timeline." Sen pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. He spread it across the table. It was a hand-drawn map, ink smudged from sweat. It showed the Kreth fleet positions and the gravitational anomaly at the system's edge. The slipstream dead zone, a region of space where folded corridors collapsed into nothing. "We have a signal ghost emitter. We have a captured Reill operator still alive in the holding cell. We have one cargo hauler with a jury-rigged slipstream engine." He tapped the map. "This is the plan. We use the signal ghost to project a false retreat. We make the Kreth believe we are running. They will pursue. We hack the Reill hive uplink through the captured operator. We broadcast a fake order to the Kreth commander. We pull his fleet into the dead zone. When they enter, we collapse the corridor. The slipstream fracture will tear them apart." Silence. The rain hissed against the tent. Rickard spoke first. His voice was low, almost thoughtful. "That kills half of us." Sen nodded. "Possibly more. The diversion force will be exposed. The ship that triggers the collapse needs to be inside the dead zone when the corridor fractures. That ship will not survive." Nessa rolled her shoulders. The motion made her wince. She did not stop. "I will lead the diversion." Sen turned to her. "Nessa." "I said I will lead it." She shifted her weight off the crutch. "I have 17 soldiers left. They know my voice. They will follow me into that valley. They will die believing they are buying time for a retreat. That is the only way the Kreth will believe the deception." She met his gaze. "Do not waste them." Sen opened his mouth. He closed it. He tapped his finger twice against the table. Ivor stood up. The armor on his chest rippled slightly. It responded to the shift in his posture. The dormant carapace caught the lamplight like wet stone. "I will pilot the cargo hauler." "No," the word came out before Sen could stop it. Too loud. He lowered his voice. "You are not a pilot, Ivor. You have never flown anything larger than a shuttle." Ivor's expression did not change. The conscript looked at the map, at the dead zone marked in ink, at the single line drawn through it. "I do not need to fly it. I only need to point it in the right direction. I need to trigger the engine." He pressed his thumb against his palm. "I can do that." Sen felt the weight of every command he had ever given, the weight of every name on the memorial roster. He looked at the 4 faces in the yellow light. He saw what Zyl'thor had called chaos tolerance. He saw what the Reill had classified as a low-certainty variable. He saw what the Council had dismissed as an experiment that yielded diminishing returns. He recognized it for what it was. They were not mad. They were not desperate. They were refusing to die as data points. They were refusing to let 17 graves become a footnote in a negotiation. His voice was flat when he spoke. He did not let it shake. "We write the order tonight. We move at dawn. Nessa, you take the diversion east into the ash fields. Solène, you set the signal ghost at the ridge. Rickard, you prep the captured operator for the uplink hack." He paused. "Ivor, the cargo hauler is fueled and ready. Its name is the Last Shore." Ivor nodded once. He did not ask for more time. He did not ask for a crew. The conscript turned. He walked to the tent flap. The sulfur rain hissed against the fabric. He pushed the canvas aside. He stepped through without looking back. Sen watched him go. The rain swallowed him whole. The gray light closed around his silhouette. Nothing remained but the sound of his boots squelching through the corrosive mud. Nessa moved to stand beside Sen. Her crutch sank into the wet ground. "He is going to die." Sen did not answer. "He will do it anyway." Sen looked at the datapad still sitting on the table. The Reill communique glowed softly. He picked it up. He held it for a moment. He dropped it into a puddle by his boot. The screen flickered. It went dark. He began writing the order by hand on the back of the map. Outside, the rain continued to fall. The tent seams wept a steady trickle of corrosive water. The lamp sputtered once. It settled into a dimmer glow. Sen's pen scratched across the paper. The only other sound was the distant rumble of thunder across the dead moon. He finished the order. He folded it once. He tucked it into his jacket pocket next to his heart. Then he walked to the tent flap. He stood in the opening. He looked out at the gray nothing. The last shore sat on the eastern pad. A rusted hull streaked with orange oxidation. Its slipstream ring flickered with intermittent light. The cargo bay door hung open like a mouth waiting to receive a single passenger. Ivor Tann was already walking toward it, his armor dormant, his rifle slung across his back, his steps steady. Sen watched until the gray swallowed that image too. He did not blink, he did not turn away. He realized then that the Reill had never understood what they were studying. They had run tests. They had measured outcomes. They had classified humanity as chaos-tolerant, as low certainty, as an experiment worth terminating. But the experiment was not over. It had not even begun. He stood in the corrosive rain. He watched his soldier board a rusted ship that would not come back. The ship's engines ignited with a sound like tearing metal. It lifted. It turned toward the dead zone. Sen knew with a certainty that sat in his chest like cold stone. Ivor Tann would not deviate from the course. He would fly into the corridor. He would trigger the collapse. He would erase the Kreth fleet from existence. He would do it without a single Reill watching. The rain kept falling. The ship grew small against the bone-colored sky. Sen pressed his thumb to his palm, exactly the way he had seen Ivor do 100 times. He held it there until the ship was gone. The cockpit of the cargo hauler was dark. The only light came from the red glow of the slipstream engine's status readout. The hull groaned under stress. A constant low wail like a wounded animal. Ivor Tann gripped the control yoke with both hands. His symbiont armor pulsed against his ribs, cool and alive, matching his heartbeat with a rhythm that was not quite his own. He had never flown anything larger than a shuttle. The cargo hauler was a brute of a vessel, slow and ungainly, built to carry ore between gravity wells, but it had a slipstream engine bolted to its frame. That was all that mattered. The navigation screen showed a single point of light, the dead zone, a patch of space where the slipstream corridor would collapse into nothing. It would take everything inside with it. Ivor pressed his thumb against his palm, once, twice. Then he engaged the engine. The slipstream opened with a shudder. The ship lurched forward. It was pulled into a fold of space. The fold bent light and time around its hull. Ivor felt the sensation of being stretched thin, his bones elongating, his thoughts drawn out like thread. The red glow from the readout deepened to crimson. He activated the signal ghost. The dull metallic sphere on the console began to hum. A frequency just below hearing vibrated through his teeth. On the tactical display, a fleet of phantom ships bloomed into existence behind him. Full battalions, radar returns, comm traffic, all fake, all convincing. The Kreth took the bait. Commander HSS Gates' voice burst over the intercepted channel, a low snarl punctuated by hisses. The humans have reinforcements. Pursue. Cut them off before they regroup. Ivor watched the Kreth fleet swing around. 7 warships, a cruiser, 3 frigates, 2 destroyers, a support vessel. They changed course as one. They chased a ghost fleet that did not exist. He held his course. The dead zone was 3 minutes away. The comm panel lit up. Ambassador Zyl'thor's voice filled the cockpit, its vibrations urgent and discordant. Ivor Tann, abort the approach. The Reill Council has reversed its position. We have analyzed the data. Your species demonstrates resilience beyond our projection models. We wish to preserve you as allies, not tools. Allies. Ivor did not answer. He thought of Private Voss screaming as his armor turned on him. He thought of the white cubicle and the clinical blue light of the observation deck. He thought of the 3 soldiers who died when their symbiont armor decided they were not worth keeping alive. Ivor Tann, Zyl'thor said again, its voice rising. You are not expendable. We have reconsidered the proxy model. Your cognitive tolerance for chaos is an asset we wish to integrate. Not weaponize, integrate. Do you understand? Abort the approach. Ivor looked at the navigation screen. 1 minute to the dead zone. He pressed his thumb against his palm. I understand, he said quietly. That is why I am not stopping. He cut the comm. The ship groaned louder. The slipstream engine's pitch rose. It climbed toward a frequency that hurt his ears. Burning plastic filled the cockpit, sharp and chemical. A console panel at his elbow began to smoke. The armor tightened around his ribs, a final embrace. He felt its hunger surge, an instinct to preserve itself. It wanted to take control, to pull him away from the controls, to save them both. But Ivor had learned something in the past weeks. The armor was alive, it could be argued with. He placed his hand over his chest. The carapace was warm now, almost hot. "Not yet," he whispered, "just a little longer." The armor pulsed, it understood, it did not agree, but it understood. The Kreth fleet entered the dead zone. Ivor saw them on the tactical display. 7 icons converging on the false signals. They were committed now, too deep to turn back. He triggered the engine overload. The slipstream engine had a failsafe. Every Reill engine did, a mechanism to collapse the corridor safely if the dark energy reserves ran dry. Ivor had disabled the failsafe. He had rerouted the safety protocols into a feedback loop. When the engine overloaded, it would not collapse safely. It would tear. The pitch became a scream. The red glow became white. The hull began to shake apart. Ivor closed his eyes. He expected fear. He had braced for it, prepared for it. He had told himself that his last moments would be filled with terror, but the fear did not come. Instead, a strange peace settled over him, calm and quiet as the tide going out. He had chosen this, not the Reill, not the Kreth, not the armor. He had chosen his own ending. That choice was the thing the Reill could never predict, more than any victory on any battlefield. He thought of his coastal village, the wooden dock with the worn rope cleats, the smell of seawater and drying nets. The way the boats looked at dawn, small and black against a pink sky. He could almost taste the salt. The slipstream corridor collapsed. A small star's worth of energy folded inward. A singularity opened where the dead zone had been. The Kreth fleet had no time to scream. 7 warships were pulled into a point smaller than an atom. They were compressed into nothing. Ivor's ship disintegrated around him. The cockpit wall peeled away. The console dissolved. The control yoke tore from its mount. It vanished into white. Vacuum hit him like a physical blow, cold, absolute. His lungs seized, his vision blurred. But the armor did not let go. It extruded a survival pod around his torso. Organic filaments shot from the carapace. They wove into a shell of hardened gel and carbon fiber. The armor screamed into his mind, a raw pulse of instinct and effort. It sealed the pod in the instant before the ship's hull vaporized completely. Ivor Tann tumbled into empty space, unconscious, alive, alone. Hours later, a Reill recovery ship found the pod. The artifact operator's sensors detected a single organic signature. Faint, fading, but present. The pod had no propulsion, no beacon, no heat trace. It was a dark speck in a field of debris, indistinguishable from wreckage. By the time they pulled him aboard, he was barely breathing. His symbiont armor was dead. It had given everything to build the pod. The carapace was brittle and cracked. It flaked away like dried mud. The living bond was severed. Ivor Tann was just a man again. Thin, scarred, hollow-eyed. But alive. The war was over. The Kreth fleet was gone. The Reill Council had what it wanted, conclusive data on human resilience. But the data came with a new question. A question no one had asked before. A question Ambassador Zyl'thor repeated in the council chamber. Its bioluminescence flickered with something close to distress. What do you do with a species that would rather die than be a tool? The council chamber was a sphere of absolute darkness. Zyl'thor floated at its center, a column of shimmering violet gel. Around it, 3 points of light hung in the void. They were the counselors, each a single precise star in the infinite black. There was no sound except the low hum of the energy field that contained them. No walls, no floor, only the lights and the cold. Artifex Kell was not present. Its data stream pulsed through Zyl'thor's awareness instead. The numbers were clean, precise, terrible. 400 human conscripts landed on Ossuary. 37 remained alive. 212 died in combat. The rest died when their symbiont armor turned on them during the final assault. A cascade failure the Reill analysts had not predicted. The armor bonded too deeply. When the humans broke, the armor broke with them. When the humans refused to break, the armor broke anyway. Zyl'thor let the silence hold. It had learned something from the humans. Silence had weight. The first counselor spoke. Its light pulsed a cool white. The Kreth have sued for unconditional surrender. They cite the human proxy force as an unacceptable tactical risk. They will leave the Ossuary sector entirely. They will cede all contested territories. They will sign any treaty the Reill demand, provided humans are never deployed against them again. A second counselor, its light burned a steady amber. The proxy war is over, we have won. Zyl'thor said nothing. The second counselor continued. The humans were effective, more effective than any projection. Their chaos tolerance exceeded all models. They improvised through situations that would have paralyzed any other species. They treated doctrine as a suggestion. They treated their own survival as optional. The first counselor's light flickered. They are too effective. They cannot be controlled. The original plan was to use them as expendable assets. They refused to be expendable. They forced the Kreth to sue for peace by demonstrating that no cost was too high. That is not the behavior of a tool. That is the behavior of a predator. Zyl'thor vibrated a deep violet, the color of unease. It had not stopped vibrating since it watched Ivor Tann's signal ghost lure an entire fleet into a collapsing slipstream corridor. It had not stopped thinking about his voice, the calm in it, the choice he made. The third counselor spoke. Its light was a pale blue. What is your recommendation, Ambassador? Zyl'thor formed its thoughts carefully. It extended a pseudopod into the darkness, a gesture of attention. Containment, limited diplomatic integration, offer them a place in the galactic community, but with boundaries, observe them, learn them, do not make them enemies. The second counselor's amber light brightened. And if they refuse containment, then we do not provoke them. We have seen what they do when provoked. The first counselor pulsed white again, a different proposal, extermination. The word hung in the chamber, the energy field hummed. Zyl'thor felt the gel of its body tighten. The proposal was logical, a species that could not be predicted, could not be controlled, could not be deterred. Such a species must be removed before it becomes a threat. The logic was clean, the logic was cold, the logic was everything the Reill were. But Zyl'thor had watched a human choose to die. It had watched a human smile at the moment of impact. That did not fit any model. Artifex Kell's data stream pulsed through the chamber. The third counselor read it silently. Zyl'thor felt the data too. It was Kell's final analysis of human cognitive instability. The conclusion was stark. What the Reill had called instability was not a flaw. It was a survival mechanism. Humans evolved on a world where the environment changed without warning. Predators came from unexpected directions. Seasons shifted unpredictably. Food sources appeared and disappeared at random. The humans who survived were the ones who could act without complete information, the ones who could make a decision and commit to it, even when every model said they were wrong. The third counselor spoke slowly. Artifex Kell describes this as a feature, not a bug. The same trait that makes them unpredictable also makes them adaptable. The same trait that makes them dangerous also makes them resilient. They do not break when the situation changes. They accelerate. The chamber fell silent again. Zyl'thor could feel the counselors processing. They were not used to uncertainty. The Reill were a species of measurement. They calculated, predicted, acted. They did not gamble. They did not trust instinct. They had no instinct to trust. And now they faced a species that gambled with its own life. That treated death as a reasonable outcome. That said with a calm voice, I choose this. The first counselor's white light dimmed. It was thinking. The second counselor's amber light steadied. It was waiting. The third counselor spoke. I will hear the human's final transmission, the one recorded before the slipstream corridor collapsed. Zyl'thor pulsed acknowledgement. It projected the recording into the darkness. The audio was garbled. Static hissed through the chamber. The slipstream engine's overload had filled the channel with interference. But one phrase cut through, clear, precise, human. Tell them we were never expendable. The transmission ended. The silence that followed had weight. Zyl'thor felt it pressing against its gel body. This was what the humans called pressure, deep underwater, unavoidable. The same pressure Ivor Tann must have felt in that cargo hauler. The same pressure he chose to face without the armor that would have killed him anyway. The first counselor's light pulsed once. Extermination is a risk. If we fail, we create an enemy with nothing to lose. The second counselor's light pulsed in agreement. We do not know their full capabilities. We have only seen what they showed us. What they showed us was a willingness to die rather than be used. The third counselor's light steadied. Containment is also a risk. They may not accept it. They may see it as another form of control. They may react the same way they reacted to the armor. Zyl'thor formed its response. Then we offer them something genuine, not a cage, a partnership. The second counselor's light burned hotter. They are not ready for partnership. They are a pre-FTL species. They have not earned their place. They earned it today, Zyl'thor said. The Kreth will not face them again. They have won this war. They are not asking for our permission. They are asking for our recognition. The first counselor's light flickered. A long pause, then it spoke. The vote will be called. The counselors pulsed in sequence. Light, data, decision. The first counselor, extermination. The second counselor, extermination. The third counselor, containment with diplomatic integration. Zyl'thor, containment with diplomatic integration. The count was 2-2. The motion failed. Zyl'thor felt something it could not name. A shift, a fracture in its own cognitive frame. It had never been uncertain before. It had never doubted the council's wisdom, but now it doubted everything. The third counselor spoke. We will offer the surviving humans a colony world. In exchange, they will sign a non-aggression pact. They will be observed, they will be studied, but they will not be caged. The first counselor's light dimmed further. And if they refuse, then we will face the consequences. The third counselor's light pulsed once. Ambassador Zyl'thor will deliver the offer. Zyl'thor accepted. It had no other choice, but as it withdrew from the chamber, it felt the weight of that silence following it. The pressure, the question. It surfaced into the corridor outside the chamber. The light was dim and green. The air was cold. A Reill messenger pulsed a data packet into Zyl'thor's awareness. A medical report. Designation, human subject Ivor Tann. The subject had survived. Against all probability, the cargo hauler's cockpit had been ejected before the overload. The subject's symbiont armor had been removed. There was no bond to break, no feedback loop. The subject was conscious. The subject was asking for one thing. A fishing rod. Zyl'thor read the request 3 times. It did not understand. It searched its database. A fishing rod was a tool, a thin pole with a line and a hook, used to catch aquatic organisms for food or sport. The humans on Ossuary did not have fishing rods. There was no water on Ossuary. There was no need for food. The medical bay provided nutrition. Why would he ask for this? Zyl'thor tried to model the request. It could not. The human mind was a closed system. Its logic was alien. Its desires were opaque. The request was not a code. It was not a threat. It was simply incomprehensible. That incomprehension was the true legacy of the war. Zyl'thor floated toward the medical bay. It would deliver the council's offer. It would face the human who chose death and failed. It would ask him what he wanted. It already knew the answer would make no sense. The corridor stretched ahead. The lights pulsed dimly. Zyl'thor felt the weight of everything it did not know. The chamber's silence still pressed against its body. The human's voice still echoed in its awareness. Tell them we were never expendable. Zyl'thor had no translation for that. No model, no prediction. It had only the certainty that it must learn, because the alternative was a war they already proved they were willing to win. The recovery bay smelled of disinfectant and ozone. Medical drones hummed overhead. Their movements were precise and silent. Ivor Tann lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. His arm felt light without the symbiont armor. The weight was gone, so was something else he could not name. The sealed container sat on a table beside him. Black carapace, inert, dead. He had felt it die when the slipstream collapsed. The armor had screamed inside his skull for 3 seconds. Then it went quiet. He had been alone in the dark after that. Alone and floating and waiting to die. But he did not die. Ambassador Zyl'thor hovered near the foot of the bed. Its gel body shifted through a soft amber glow. Slow and warm, the color meant something. Ivor did not know what. He did not care. You are awake, Zyl'thor said. The vibration came from somewhere inside the column, a low hum that formed words. Ivor turned his head. How long? 71 standard hours. Your body required extensive repair. The symbiont withdrawal caused neural shock. The others... Zyl'thor's light flickered to a dim blue. 37 survivors are in the medical compartment. 9 are critical. The rest will recover. The Kreth fleet is destroyed. The war ended when you collapsed the corridor. Ivor closed his eyes. 37 from 400. The number sat in his chest like a stone. We assessed your strategic approach, Zyl'thor continued. Its tone shifted. The vibration came slower now. The council reached a decision. We will offer your group a colony world. You will have domain to establish a self-sufficient settlement. In return, the Reill request observation rights and a non-aggression pact. You will not be exploited as conscripts again. Ivor opened his eyes. He looked at the ceiling. The light was white and sterile. He thought about the dead moon, the sulfur rain, Private Voss screaming, the smell of burnt insulation. What if we refuse? Zyl'thor's bioluminescence flattened to a pale yellow. That would be an unfortunate outcome. Ivor understood. The offer was not a choice. It was a different shape of cage, but he was too tired to fight anymore. He nodded. I will tell the others. Zyl'thor pulsed once, a slow ripple of light. The council also authorized a personal request. You asked for a fishing rod. Ivor blinked. He had almost forgotten. The request had come from a memory, his father's hands mending nets on the dock, the sound of water lapping against wood, a moment of peace before the shuttle came. Yes, he said. We do not understand the request. Zyl'thor's voice carried a rare note of hesitation. There is no water on the colony world we selected. We can provide nutrition. There is no need for a fishing rod. Ivor turned his head. He looked at the sealed container, the dead armor, the black carapace that had tried to eat him alive. It is not about the fish, he said. Zyl'thor's light flickered, rapid, uncertain. Then what is it about? Ivor did not answer. He closed his eyes. He let the silence fill the room. He thought of the dock, the rope cleats worn smooth by his father's hands, the smell of salt and tar, the way the net felt before he cast it, heavy with potential. He thought of the moment when the net left his hands and arced against the sky, that moment of trust, the belief that something would come back. He had not felt that in a long time. The medical drone hummed overhead. The light pressed against his eyelids. Zyl'thor waited in the quiet. Ivor opened his eyes. Get me the rod, he said. I will show you.